turn on the recording and pin that part. So this is the, I want to just talk about the cabling for our project. We're doing the intersection sock from Hay Brown Berry Knits. And is anybody doing size 1? Okay, and is anybody doing?
I am.
And you're doing size 1?
I'm doing size 1.
Okay, and is anybody doing size 2 or 4? Maybe. So I have the page.
Doing 2.
You're doing 2? Okay. So I have the page in front of me for the socks. And what I want to just show is that I have color coded my chart. And you'll notice here in the key that there are 2 cables. There is, and they go over 4 stitches, and one of them is left twist and one of them is right twist. So this is just good information to have for doing cables in the future, that sometimes the pattern will have multiple different kinds of cables. And you can take a highlighter pen or a colored pencil and you can just give them their own color. And then when you go to the chart, you can put that color onto the one that matches. So there's only 2 in this chart. There's only the white one and the pink one. So I only used color for one of them. But that way, when you look down here and you look up here, you don't get confused easily by which cable it is. So I find that color coding a chart is a really helpful way. Some charts come that way. It's a really helpful way of keeping track of things. Another thing, it tells you here that you have, everything is knit because this is done in the round and we're not doing any purl stitches. And then they have this gold color outline, and that tells you what is the cable pattern repeat. So for those of you doing a size 1, you have 4 extra stitches in your repeat. You don't have a number of stitches clearly divisible by 8. You have a multiple of 8 plus 4. And so you will do the 8 stitches, the 8 stitches, the 8 stitches 4 times or 5 times, depending on how many, and then you'll do the last 4. So again, just to review that when we're reading a chart, we start from the bottom right-hand corner, and we typically, not every chart, but typically charts are written and they show the number of the round on the side, or the row on the side where you read it from. So if you notice that the numbers for each round, or in our case, it's just the top half of our stitches. But for this round, they start at the bottom and they number all the way up. And what you see is they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is an 8-row repeat. And then you can also see that the cables only happen on the 4th and the 8 rows. So mostly what you're doing for this sock is what we do for all socks, and we're working in stockinette stitch. And the pattern starts with 3 plain rows of knitting before you even get to the cable itself. The other thing I just want to point out about this, and I want to talk about, it came up in the other group, and we talked a little bit about how when you do different forms of cabling, I think I said that I did a cable without a cable needle in the first couple of rows, and I noticed how elongated my stitches looked. And so here is this long stitch in my first round of cabling, and then it's a little bit elongated here in this one. And so I didn't like that as much, but I tried it for about 4 rows and then I gave up on it. And so if you look up higher in my project, you don't see such elongated stitches. The stitches look more even, but they're not completely even. And that could be a helpful thing for you going forward. If you're trying to figure out what row you're on, you can look for the slightly elongated stitch. The slightly elongated stitch is the row where you cabled. So if you're not sure if you're on a round 1, 2, 3 after a cable, you can look down and look to see which is the longest one before you, and then count the number of rows up from there. Another thing is if you move over that cable where it's elongated, you'll find a little hole. And that's very common in cables, that there's a little hole where the stitches are twisted. And that little hole is actually a place that you can count from. So the hole is right below the cable row. And so if you needed to count, if you needed to sort of keep track of which row you're on and you're above this cable, you could look for the hole, or you could look for the elongated stitch, and that's where the cable row is. And then you could go, okay, so that's 1, that's the cable row, and then how many above. So here's my elongated stitch, here's round. So let's say this was a round 4. So this would be 5, 6, 7. And then look, there again is an elongated stitch, and that's in row 8. So that's my, and I think it can be confusing as you're doing your cables, but that's a helpful marker to look at. Hi, Heather.
Oh, I'm sorry I'm late. Had trouble getting on.
It's okay. We are recording. So all of this will go up. So I just want to do a demonstration of the cable for everybody. And I'm going to use 2 different tools. I'm going to use a double pointed needle to do it, because we talked about that as a tool. And I'm going to use my, my little floops stitch. I don't know what it's a Flox. This is a Flox from Floops, and it's a little bendy knitting needle. And so that's going to be my one. So here I am. I've got my 32 stitches. So I'm doing size 2, and I'm ready to start the beginning of the round of round 4. So I'm here, and I'm going to knit 4 first. And then I'm going to, so a cable, imagine a cable, my fingers are the 4 stitches involved in a cable. So when you imagine doing a cable, remember that you're always going to move the first 2 stitches. You don't move the second 2. You move the first 2, and you either hold them to the front, and that makes a left leaning cross, or you hold them to the back, and you can see that then the front stitches are leaning to the right. So either the stitches lean to the left or they lean to the right, and it is entirely dependent on where the first 2 stitches that you come to are held, whether they're held behind or in front. So if you're doing your cabling and you get confused, it's always, you've always got your hands, and you can just go, okay, wait, to the back, to the front, like which one is a left, that's a right leaning, that's a left leaning, and you can just see it right in front of you. Okay, so this is, and you can see the slant across here, this is a right leaning cable. So I'm going to use the double pointed needle first as a demonstration. So I am going to be moving the stitches I take off first to the back. And the easiest way to do that when you have a double pointed needle is just to slide, to really just slide the needle behind. So then I pick up my knitting, and I kind of work through the labyrinth here with my working yarn. I want to keep my working yarn close, and I don't want to get all entangled in the double pointed needle. And so I work the next 2 stitches on the left needle. And then I have a choice. I can either slide these back onto my left needle from the double point, or I can slide the double point over and knit the 2 stitches from the end. And if you have a J hook or a top hat shaped cable needle, so I think, Linda, you held up one that is sort of shaped like a top hat. So I'm going to spotlight on Linda for just a second. Everybody see that? So in this case, you would slide it looks like a double pointed needle except for the bend, and some of them have a rectangular bend. And so when you're working this, you slide the left end of the cable needle into the stitches. You can hang them at the point. Hold it up again, sweetie. So you can hang the stitches off of the bend in the front or the back of your knitting. And then you can slide them to the other end and work them off of the point, just like I did with the double pointed needle. And that works for that shape of cable needle. And it also works for the cable needle that is shaped like a J. And here I'm going to just demonstrate with my little guy. So with the J hook, you slide your stitches onto the short end of a J hook, and then you let them rest on the curve in the front or the back, and then you turn them and you knit them off of the long end. So the different types of cable needles, you can work from both ends if they're smooth in the middle and you can easily slide your stitches along. So that's sort of the issue with the using a stitch holder or using something like the Phlox, is that they're not completely smooth to work off of the end. So if you are faced with that situation, I'm just going to knit my intermediate 4 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to do my cable again, but this time I'm going to use the Phlox. So I'm going to slide the stitches off and I'm going to hold them to the back. I'm going to knit the next 2. And then I just find it easier to take these and slip them back onto the left needle. So you've got your cable done that way. So do one more, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you get to pick which is your favorite way. Whether you like using a double pointed needle. I pretty much like using the smoothest needle I can get. For this. Because it's one of those extra step kind of things in knitting. You're doing something special with these stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. Why do I have the wrong number of stitches? This happened earlier. I may have to go back and fix my things. Or no, it's not. I have the right number of stitches. I'm supposed to end with a cable. Hello. So the last way that she talks about in the pattern is to do the cable without a needle. And not everybody is 100% comfortable with this. I'm going to demonstrate it and you can make the decision for yourself. One of the places that I like to make socks is when somebody else is driving in the car. And so I find this way of making the cable a little bit hair raising, because if I'm in the car and I'm trying to make little cables on little stitches and my husband does not do anything but find the potholes, I'm always afraid that I'm going to lose my stitches. So if you're going to do the cable here without the needle, you would let the front stitches go off, and you would put your needle into the back stitches, and you just maybe change their position. So you'd have to kind of fearlessly pick up the stitches
No way.
and then and change them around. That's one way. And then just knit them. So I feel like, yeah, you can do that. And, you know, swimming without a net or doing trampolines without a net. Off the ringer on my phone. Is all very good, but like I split this one. So now I'm going to have to get my stitch back on the needle and really try and center it so it's not split. I don't like split stitches. Not thrilled with that one. So that's not a method that I find really great. And again, I like to knit in the car, so I find it a little disconcerting to be thinking about picking up stitches. So what can you do? What if you don't have your cable needle? What else can you use? It's been done.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It's a big paper clip can work.
Toothpicks.
Toothpicks can work. Golf pencils, depending on the size of your stitch, a golf pencil can work. But I appreciate the designers who are out there. I'm going to unpin you, Linda, so you don't have to be the star of the show. And I'm going to go back to talking to you from with face. Here's my face. So I feel like cables can be done in lots of different ways, and cable needles can come in different forms. I have used and of course I should have found one and then had it here to show you, but I use the safety pin shaped holder a lot of times for a cable needle because I like to actually pin it into my knitting in between cable rows. Because as you will find out as you do this project, there are 3 rounds of no cables before you get to another cable row. And if you are anything like me, you'll put that cable hook or the cable needle down, or your paper clip or your whatever, and then it'll be the cable row and you'll think, where did I put that? Where has it gone now? Mine's always between the couch cushions at that point or on the floor of the car. But I cannot tell you the number of times I've patted myself down, like, where's my cable needle gone to? So I like.
I've been using this one. It's just my.
Oh, that's a
really
good
good.
one. Yeah, and that's actually one that's around. So I have done that too. I've used a darning needle to cable.
And then I just put it into my knitting. And it's
And then
right
you
there.
can, yep, then you can pin it into your knitting. That's a great one. So we're happy to sell you, a silver plated cable needle, but at the end of the day, you don't have to have one to be able to do cables. We don't have a silver plated cable needle in the store, by the way. We only have the regular old kind. And we don't have many that are really good for tiny things. So Elfrida was the one who brought up using double pointed needles, and I like that idea. But darning needles, that's a great suggestion, Anna. Anybody else use anything in a pinch? So Heather, have you tried the cable yet?
No, I was waiting for your expertise.
Well, there it is. Now get going.
So those little symbols, they've got those are the cables. I mean, do you do them all in the same direction then?
No.
Okay, so did I miss the part where you know the direction?
Yes. So the direction is.
I can do it online if you want.
The direction is shown. So it says this is right leaning. And you'll notice that the center part of this leans to the right. And then the pink one is left leaning and the center part of that leans to the left. And so I've color coded them, a white one and a pink one. So here's my white one, that's the bottom right leaning one. Here's the pink one, it's the left leaning, sorry. Yeah, left leaning. And what I explained a little bit earlier was that imagine these 4 fingers are
Oh,
your
I saw
4,
that part. It just,
those are your 4 cable stitches. So a 4-stitch cable is a 2x2 cable or a 3x1 cable. But what it means is either 2 stitches are crossed or 3 stitches and 1 are crossed.
okay.
You can have cables, and you can also have cables that go like that. And that's actually a pair of 2 cables crossing.
So when you were doing those, did you do left or right?
So the difference, so left means that the first you knit from right to left, you come to the right hand stitches first.
Mhm.
To make a left leaning cable, you hold those stitches to the front while you knit those first, and then you knit these.
Okay.
And to make a right leaning cable, you take these stitches and you hold them to the back while you knit these, and then you knit those.
So basically, right leaning is the first 2.
It's always the first 2 stitches. Right leaning is the first 2 stitches behind,
Oh,
and
okay.
left leaning is the first 2 stitches in front.
Okay.
You always put the right 2 stitches or the right half of the stitches
Mhm.
to the back or the front to get the lean.
Right. Okay.
So
Thank
it's
you.
never the right hand, it's never the left hand stitches that are moved. They're just being knitted in a different order.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So then it's really easy if you just hold your hands in front of you. Like if my right hand is the one that's going to get moved, left, so right, left, whatever,
Yeah.
you
Got it.
can visualize it pretty straightforwardly, just crossing your hands in front of you.
Okay.
Okay. And then we can, and then you can look around the house for things that can be used as, a coffee stirrer. Ooh, a coffee stirrer could work if you're like on a road trip. You could hit the Starbucks and get a coffee stirrer or a toothpick. And then somebody in the earlier class was saying golf pencils, and then shared that golf pencils don't have erasers on them, so you can't cheat.
Oh, that's why. I thought it was just cheap. I thought they were just cheap.
I thought they were cheap too, but it's so you can't cheat at golf.
Oh, because people don't cheat at golf.
It's a game of honor, Ingrid. People don't cheat at golf, do they?
Only if your first name starts with the letter T.
Well, he doesn't just cheat at golf.
I know, but
Sometimes I use a double point, but I stick it in my ponytail.
Yes, but not all of us have it. Well, I didn't have a ponytail for years, but now I do.
you put it behind your ear like you put a pencil.
I know, but the glasses make them fall out. So I used to like a J hook, and then I would hold it with my thumb like this. I would put it around my thumb. And I actually kind of like this one for that reason. I would put it, so when I was knitting something else, I would twist it on my finger. So it's just twisted, or, it's like another ring. And so then when I'm knitting, it's just sitting there, and then I can grab it when I get back to that row. It's just sitting on this finger. Sorry, I have a very distracting background of nothing much. So today, no, wait, yesterday, today's Monday, right? Yesterday, a friend of ours called, a friend of my husband's called and said his wife is running for judge. It's Laura Creed, if anybody knows Laura. Howard Creed is her husband and a friend of my husband's. And Laura is running for judge in Shaker, and we think she'd be awesome as a judge. And Howard called to say, could they use our house for a fundraiser because we have a big lawn. And our lawn is a mess. I haven't done 1 minute in the backyard all summer. And I just found it. My husband was so proud yesterday. I was, gosh, what did I do? Maybe it was when I was at work on Saturday. It must have been when I was at work on Saturday. He was really proud and he called me up and he was like, I took down that weed that was covering up the electricity meter and the water meter and where the cables come in and things like that. And by the air conditioning units, I took down that weed. It's gone. It was a trumpet vine shrub that I mean, it needed to be pruned, but now it's gone. But in its place, there are weeds in the bed that he took out the trumpet vine from. So there's like big weeds right next to where he took it out. And he's like, he got a saw out for this. He had to saw this out of the. He's so proud of himself. And it's like, I can't. I mean, it'll come back in a couple of years because it's a weedy kind of a plant, but it was he doesn't realize it was covering the meters, which looked terrible against the wall of the house. So he did that. So that was one phone call, was we're going to have our house be used. So my favorite part of this is they came over to look at the house and decided they are only going to do it in the front yard. Because they took one look at our backyard and said, no, way too many dogs back there. So then this morning I was driving Lily from one appointment to another and the phone rang and Lily made me answer it. And it was somebody whose name I didn't know. And I won't usually answer if it's somebody whose name I don't know. And it was this young woman calling from Shaker Heights because we were featured for the article about the solar panels, and they're going to do a solar tour of Shaker in October, and they wanted us to be on the solar tour. Like, nobody should come see my house. My house is a wreck right now. It's embarrassing. All my knitting stuff is in the dining room. It looks like hoarders live in my house. It's horrible. Like, this is what my workroom looks like. This is not what it's supposed to look like in here. It's supposed
But
to be
that's what
nice.
you're painting. It's going to be beautiful.
It will be, but like by October, I just want to cry. So I said yes, because, presumably I can throw a sheet over them or something. But that means that the outside of my house has to be presentable in 2 weeks. And then again at the beginning of October. And my husband is busy outside weeding.
I don't ask my brother to weed.
I've never asked my husband to weed. He was not asked to remove this bush. I have asked him to remove we have raised beds. I've asked him to take the weeds out of the raised beds, but I'm fairly cautious about it because he has removed perennials before. So that's the end of my sad story. I was like, that's not a weed. I went out to take the dogs today and I looked at the disaster that is the corner of my yard where all of the electricity meters and things are. It's like, that's what I thought. It's like that was hiding a whole multitude of sins. So anyway,
What should we have done for next week?
well, the next thing we're going to do is the heel shaping. So again, with this sock, it is a Flegel heel, similar to the one we did on the DRK. So it makes, I'm going to do it from underneath so you can see it better. Oh, we're still recording. I guess we can still be recording. No, I'm going to have to edit that.